got alerted at least one, maybe the only bathroom is out of order.
There's two bathrooms.
There's
one
two.
On the corner.
Can you get a sign on it?
I don't know which. One of the bathrooms is apparently out of order. That was my dad just told me. So we either put a sign to close it or someone just get it to you. She left. She was at the bathroom.
Do we have anything to put a sign? Do we have tape?
We can make an announcement.
Can we get everybody's attention? We're going to start here real quick. Just to get some things, just housekeeping stuff. This first bathroom right here, the toilet's not flushing all the way. So if you do need to use the restroom, go around down there, turn to your right again. First one right there, not so much. Okay, welcome. Thank you everybody for being here. I really appreciate, this is a great turnout. I'm going to introduce Devin in a second, but I'm going to introduce myself and give you a little bit of background. I'm Angie Gerard. I think I know almost everybody in here. I've had a couple people ask me, in fact I got the question again this morning, why I am supporting an independent candidate. And I think that question is coming up from a lot of people because they know my history with the Democrats in Yakima. So about 10 years ago was kind of my first foray into politics. And actually, Brian, my recently new registered domestic partner. We've been together forever, but now we're registered domestic partners. So we caucused for Bernie, and this morning I was trying to figure out how we even ended up doing that. I don't even remember. And that didn't work out so well for Bernie. But we then supported Hillary Clinton, of course. And when that didn't turn out, I think, like many of us here, we went through a period of mourning and depression. And I think that's when I decided I needed to do more. And I started getting more involved here locally. And through the years, I've done different things. I've been the chair for the Legislative District Democrats for LD14 and for Yakima County Democrats. I've supported different candidates up and down the ballot. And through all that, my interactions with the state party and then kind of deep dives, end up going down rabbit holes trying to figure out things. You know, why are we in the situation that we're in right now? And the more I read and the more I understood, the more I knew that the parties, to a very large degree, are opposite sides of the same coin. They are kind of self-serving. Once you're in the system, it's there to serve them and not us. And it was a lot of soul searching for me. I kind of separated out a little bit from the Yakima County Democrats. I still support them. They still do wonderful things. It's just I need a different path. And I knew that because of corruption and everything that's going on with Congress, that we needed somebody different. So just by happenstance, I'm online looking up who's running for Congressional District 4, and Devin's name popped up in this article. So I read the article, then I emailed him, then he called me, and after hours on the phone, I was like, this is my man. He is speaking my language. He knows that we have to go after the corruption, we have to have term limits. Those things have to be taken care of before we can be taken care of. So that answers that question, if anybody wanted to know why I'm supporting an independent candidate. And I'm going to now let Devin talk about himself and his platform, and hopefully you guys will have a little, it's Valentine's Day, so I'm going to call it the Poore Amore that I'm doing. So Devin, here, take it away.
Thank you, Angie, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for coming out. Wow, this is crazy. My wife assures me that I have to start this talk by talking about myself, which is one of my least favorite things, a little bit. So I'm going to try that, and we'll see how it goes. Does anyone here know where Republic, Washington is? Wow, holy moly, okay. So I grew up in the Republic area, and so as many of you know, it's very rural, very small town, and that was my upbringing, that was my youth in that kind of environment. My parents, my mom is a New England Democrat, my dad is a Republican from Louisiana. They didn't talk much politics growing up. It wasn't a particularly political household, and so I didn't feel particularly political growing up. But I was in a very political environment, even if I didn't totally understand it. It's a conservative environment, culturally and politically. And so, you can imagine, I graduate from high school, I get accepted to the University of Washington, and I moved to Seattle, go Dogs. And I moved to Seattle, only to find that the culture of Seattle is exactly the same as the culture of Republic of Washington. It's like, come on, birds of a feather. And of course, dramatic difference. It was a huge shock. It took me quite a bit of time to process the difference, and there's a lot of differences. But I started meeting people with very different perspectives from my own, and I also started meeting people who were born and raised in the Seattle area who had very little understanding of what it's like to come from a very rural upbringing. And so I started to feel this sense of bridging these two worlds a little bit, and I'm very fortunate that in my young adult life, by the time I was in my mid-20s, I had this firm sense of these two worlds. They're two worlds that make up a lot of our communities in our society at large, and we often stay kind of stratified in either side of those two ends of the spectrum. And I think that is something that has been taken advantage of and manipulated. We've been set against each other in certain ways. And so, you know, as I'm going through this process of having moved to this place, it's very different from my upbringing. I'm learning more about what that's like. I'm learning more about the kind of political and cultural values of people in this area, or in Seattle. This is 2015, 2016. I don't know if you guys recall, there was a presidential election around that time. And very quickly, my adult life, and for a lot of people younger like myself, much of our adult life as an active, American politically, has been one of watching our country drift further and further apart, be further and further, galvanized, away from each other, divided, deeply, deeply polarized. And I think it's brought us to this place that many of us recognize. I don't think anyone's disputing we're in a challenging and dangerous situation for our nation, for our democracy. Yeah, I have notes. Forgot about my notes. Yes. So we've seen this, right? We've seen this political escalation. It has ratcheted up and ratcheted up and ratcheted up. And yet it seems like there's still a relatively small group of people, well-connected, well-financed. They seem to be doing very well. They continue to do well. And the working class in this country continues to really struggle in dramatic ways. Affordability, prices are going up, while at the same time, income inequality is at extreme levels that have not been seen perhaps ever, perhaps in a century in this country. And so, yeah, that Angie alluded to some of this as the background for my motivations for running. And my main focus politically, which really is, it has been a convenient tool for the political class in this country, the establishment, political class in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, to really set the American people against one another. And it's exhausting. I think many people are exhausted. I'm exhausted. I feel like I said, after spending most of my adult life up to this point enmeshed in this cycle with no real alternative, finding myself typically supporting Democrats and only to be pretty disappointed with the outcome. We need a new path. We need a new vision. We need a new alternative way of thinking about our politics that doesn't involve this us versus them. And so, yeah, it set me to thinking. I've always known that corruption was an issue. I've always known that that was a deep in the kind of rot of Washington, D.C., and it has an impact on a lot of things that we care about. But it's so easy in the day-to-day to get distracted by this story, that story, the newest controversy. And trust me, there's going to be a new controversy tomorrow and next week and next month. It will never end. They will always be taken advantage of by people who have an interest in continuing to set the American people against each other. And so, unless we can focus and stay focused and stay vigilant on what the real core issue is, it's not the only issue. And rooting out corruption won't solve every problem in our nation, but it will at least, I think, give us an opportunity to start addressing some of those problems a lot more honestly than we've been enabled to do up to this point. So, yeah, so I guess that brings me to some of the things that I'm focused on in this campaign. Angie alluded to a couple of them, but I think we all agree that money in politics has had a very corrosive effect. It's unlimited spending at this point, and it's essentially our politicians are for sale. We know this, we see it operating. So how do we fix it? You know, how do we begin to curb this system of corruption that seems to really have taken hold of our government? And I think what it's really going to take in the long run is a constitutional amendment to limit that money. But that's a long and hard path, and it's going to take us some time to get there. So we've got to think more about what is the path we can forge right now that is reasonable, that is realistic for us to accomplish, that will get us to a point where something like a constitutional amendment becomes more likely. And so I've honed in on a few policies. Public campaign finance system, term limits, as Angie mentioned, and banning of stock ownership for members of Congress, really for all federal officials. And I don't know if anyone here, or I'm sure people here, banning stocks, that's pretty self-evident. Term limits, that's pretty self-evident. Public campaign finance system, some of us have maybe heard of it. It's a little less frequently discussed, but the idea of a public campaign finance system is something I'm pretty excited about. It's the idea that we make money available to candidates, public money, so that they don't have to go ask big donors for money. And there can be conditions around how they access this money. It can be accessed through campaign donation matching. It can be accessed through, you know, donation vouchers that are given to voters, and they can allocate that money to candidates that